Betrayal cuts deeper when it comes from those you trust most: family, love, the ones who know your heart. This story is about a man who faced the ultimate betrayal, lost everything, and found something greater: himself. Here's his raw, emotional journey. My name is Jake, 27, a mechanic from a small town in Ohio. My hands are calloused, my jeans are stained with grease, and I've always prided myself on fixing things: cars, mostly, but sometimes people. 5 years ago, I thought I'd found my forever with Emma. She was 25, a barista with this infectious laugh that could light up my worst days. We met at a local coffee shop when I spilled my latte, and she teased me about my clumsy mechanic hands. From that moment, I was hooked. Emma was my everything. We'd spend evenings dreaming about our future: a little house, maybe a dog, kids down the line. I wasn't rich, but I worked hard at the garage, saving up for a ring. My life felt full, complete. And then there was Mike. My older brother by 3 years. Mike's always been the golden boy: charming, good-looking, the guy who could talk his way out of anything. He's a real estate agent, always flashing his perfect smile and designer suits. Growing up, I idolized him, even when he teased me for being the quiet one. We were close, or so I thought. Mike would come over for beers, crack jokes with Emma, and I loved how they got along. It felt like family. I never imagined they'd take that trust and shatter it. Looking back, I wonder how I missed the signs. Maybe I was too busy fixing engines to notice the cracks in my own life. It started 6 months ago. I was working late at the garage, pulling overtime to save for that ring. Emma had been acting off, distant, glued to her phone, quick to snap when I asked about her day. I chalked it up to stress. She was studying to become a graphic designer, juggling night classes and her job. I didn't want to push, but then I saw a text pop up on her phone one night while she was in the shower. It was from Mike. "Miss you already. Last night was unreal." My stomach dropped. I stood there, staring at her phone on the kitchen counter, my heart pounding like a jackhammer. I didn't want to believe it. Mike? My brother? The guy who taught me how to ride a bike, who punched a bully for me in high school. And Emma, the woman I'd spent 5 years loving, planning a life with? It couldn't be real, but the text was there, burning into my brain. When Emma came out, towel wrapped around her, I held up her phone and asked, my voice shaking, "What's this?" Her face went pale, and she stammered, "It's not what you think, Jake." I wanted to scream, but I just stood there, numb. Then I called Mike. He picked up, casual as ever, and said, "Yo, what's up?" I could barely get the words out. "You're sleeping with Emma?" Silence. Then he laughed, and said, "Bro, you're overreacting. It was a one-time thing." A one-time thing, like that made it better, like it erased the betrayal. I hung up, looked at Emma, and saw her crying, begging me to listen. But I couldn't, not then. I grabbed my keys and walked out, the sound of her sobs fading behind me. That night, I drove aimlessly, the hum of my truck the only thing keeping me grounded. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment my old life ended and something new began. 5 years before that devastating text from Mike, my life felt like it was finally coming together. At 22, fresh out of trade school, I was working as a mechanic at Tony's auto shop in our small Ohio town. The garage was my sanctuary. Grease under my nails, the hum of engines, the satisfaction of fixing something broken. I wasn't rolling in cash, but I made enough to rent a one-bedroom apartment and keep my old Ford pickup running. Life was simple, and I liked it that way. Then I met Emma. It was a rainy Tuesday, and I ducked into Brewed Awakening, the coffee shop where she worked, to escape a downpour. I was fumbling with my wallet, soaked to the bone, when I knocked over my latte. Emma, with her hazel eyes and a smirk, handed me a rag and said, "Careful, clumsy, you're making my day interesting." I laughed, embarrassed, but her teasing broke the ice. We started talking, and soon, those coffee runs became the highlight of my week. She was witty, kind, and had this way of making me feel like I was enough, even when I doubted myself. We started dating a month later. Emma was studying graphic design, dreaming of making logos for big brands someday. I loved her ambition. We'd spend nights on my couch, her sketching in her notebook while I watched car restoration shows. I'd tease her about her artsy doodles, and she'd flick paint at me, laughing. We talked about everything, our fears, our dreams. I told her about growing up in the shadow of my brother, Mike, and she'd listen, really listen. I thought, this is it. She's the one. Mike was always the star of our family. 3 years older, he was the guy everyone loved, charismatic, confident, always the center of attention. He'd gone to college, got a business degree, and now worked as a real estate agent, selling houses with that $1 million smile. Growing up, he was my hero. When I was 10, he taught me how to throw a punch after some kid stole my lunch money. When I was 16, he let me tag along to his high school parties, even if I was just the quiet kid in the corner. Sure, he'd rib me sometimes, calling me grease monkey or joking about my beat-up truck, but it felt like brotherly love. I looked up to him. Mike and Emma got along great, which made me happy. He'd come over for barbecues, bringing his fancy craft beers, and Emma would tease him about his city boy suits. They'd banter, and I'd laugh, thinking how lucky I was to have my girlfriend and my brother bond like that. Family meant everything to me. Our parents passed when I was 19, car accident. So Mike was all I had left. Emma, too, became my family. I'd spend my days at the garage, my evenings with her, and weekends with both of them. Grilling burgers or watching football, life felt full. Money was tight, but I was saving up. I'd been eyeing a ring at the local jeweler's, a simple band with a tiny diamond, nothing flashy, but enough to show Emma I was serious. I'd take extra shifts, skip nights out to squirrel away cash. Emma knew I was saving for something, but I kept it a secret, wanting to surprise her. I'd imagine her face when I proposed, picturing us building a life together. Maybe a house with a big garage for me to tinker in, a studio for her art. I was all in. Looking back, I was naive. I thought love and loyalty were unbreakable. I trusted Emma with my heart, Mike with my back. I didn't see the cracks forming, how Emma's late-night study sessions were getting longer, how Mike's visits were a little too frequent. I was too busy dreaming of our future to notice the present falling apart. That text from Mike, the one that shattered everything, was still months away. But even then, in those happy days, the seeds of betrayal were already planted. I just didn't know it yet. Looking back, the signs were there, blinking like warning lights on a dashboard I was too distracted to check. About 6 months before I saw that text from Mike on Emma's phone, things started feeling off. Emma was still the woman I loved, but little things changed. She'd always been glued to her sketchbook or her phone, but now she'd tilt the screen away when I walked by. Just work stuff, she'd say, her smile a bit too tight. I brushed it off. She was stressed. I told myself her graphic design classes were intense, and she was pulling double shifts at the coffee shop. I didn't want to be the clingy boyfriend. At the garage, I was clocking 50-hour weeks, sometimes more, to save for that ring. I'd come home exhausted, grease-stained, wanting nothing more than to crash with Emma on the couch. But she was out more, study groups, she said, or late-night shifts. One night, I got off early and texted her, "Want to grab pizza?" She replied, "Stuck at the library? Rain check?" But when I drove by Brood Awakening to grab a coffee, I saw her car parked out front. My gut twisted, but I thought, maybe she's picking up an extra shift. I didn't ask. I didn't want to seem paranoid. Mike was around a lot, too. He'd swing by our apartment unannounced, saying he was in the neighborhood from showing houses. He'd plop down on our couch, crack open a beer, and tell stories about his latest real estate deals. Emma would laugh harder than usual at his jokes, her eyes lingering on him a bit too long. I noticed, but I told myself it was nothing. They were just comfortable with each other. Mike was family, and Emma was my rock. I trusted them both. Then came the little comments. Emma started picking at me in ways she hadn't before. "Jake, you're always at the garage," she'd say, rolling her eyes. "Don't you ever want to do something fun?" I'd laugh it off, but it stung. I was working those hours for us for our future. One night, we were watching a movie, and she snapped, "God, Jake, can you not smell like oil for once?" I froze, hurt. I'd showered, but the garage scent clung to me. Mike was there, and he chuckled. "Yeah, bro, you're like a walking gas station." They both laughed, but I felt small, like I was the butt of some inside joke. The manipulation crept in slowly. Emma started comparing me to Mike. Subtle at first. "Mike's always got these cool stories," she'd say. Or, "He took his client to this fancy restaurant. When's the last time we went somewhere nice?" I'd mumble something about saving money, but the doubt crept in. Was I boring her? Was I not enough? Mike didn't help. He'd drop lines like, "Man, Jake, you gotta live a little. Emma deserves a guy who keeps things exciting." He'd say it with a grin, like it was brotherly advice, but it landed like a jab. One night, I found Emma's phone buzzing on the counter while she was in the bedroom. I glanced at it, habit, not suspicion, and saw Mike's name. The preview read, "Can't stop thinking about," before it cut off. My heart raced, but I didn't unlock it. When she came out, I asked, "Why is Mike texting you so late?" She snatched the phone, her face flushing. "It's nothing, Jake. Just him being Mike. You know how he is." Her voice was sharp, defensive. I wanted to push, but she turned it around. "Why are you checking my phone? Don't you trust me?" I felt like the bad guy. I apologized, hating myself for doubting her. That was the pattern. Every time I noticed something, a late night text, a weird vibe, Emma's sudden need for space, she'd flip it on me. "You're being paranoid," she'd say, or, "Jake, I'm not your ex. Stop acting like I'm cheating." Mike was worse. When I mentioned Emma seemed off, he'd clap my shoulder and say, "Bro, you're overthinking it. She's just busy. Chill." I'd nod, feeling stupid. They were gaslighting me, and I was too in love, too trusting, to see it. But those red flags were piling up, and soon they'd be impossible to ignore. By the time I saw that text from Mike on Emma's phone, my world was already cracking, but I didn't know how much worse it could get. It was a Thursday night, 3 months after those early red flags started piling up. I was bone tired from a 12-hour shift at the garage, my fingers raw from wrestling with a rusted transmission. All I wanted was to come home to Emma, maybe order takeout and forget the world. But when I walked into our apartment, she wasn't there. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, buzzing. That's when I saw it. "Miss you already. Last night was unreal." From Mike. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stood there, frozen, the words burning into me. Last night? Emma had said she was at a study group. I believed her, like always. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and called her. "Where are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "At the library," she said, too quick. "I'll be home soon." I didn't mention the text. I couldn't, not yet. But when she walked in an hour later, her hair messy, her cheeks flushed, I held up her phone and said, "Explain this." Emma's face went white. "Jake, it's not what you think," she stammered, tears welling up. "It was just a stupid drunk moment. It didn't mean anything." I felt like I'd been punched. A drunk moment? With my brother Dash? I shouted. She kept crying, saying it was a mistake. A one-time thing at a bar after she and Mike ran into each other. I called Mike right then. He answered, all casual. "Yo, what's up?" When I asked if he was sleeping with Emma, he laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Bro, calm down. It was nothing. You're blowing this out of proportion." Nothing? My girlfriend and my brother, the two people I trusted most. I hung up, my vision blurring. Emma was sobbing, grabbing my arm, begging me to listen. "We didn't mean to hurt you, Jake. It just happened. Just happened. Like that made it okay." I tore away from her, grabbed my keys, and stormed out. I drove to Mike's place, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. When he opened the door, smirking like this was some joke, I lost it. "How could you?" I yelled, "You're my brother." He shrugged, said, "You're making it a big deal." She came onto me, man. That was it. I shoved him, hard, and walked away before I did something I'd regret. The next few weeks were hell. Emma kept texting, calling, showing up at the garage with apologies. "I love you, Jake. I messed up. Let's fix this." But every word felt like a knife. Mike was no better. He'd send messages like, "Come on, bro, we're family. Don't throw this away over a fling." A fling, 5 years with Emma, a lifetime with Mike, reduced to that. I started sleeping on the couch in my apartment, unable to stand our bed. I'd lie awake, replaying every moment, every laugh they shared, every time I ignored my gut. I felt like a fool. Work suffered. I'd zone out, drop tools, snap at customers. Tony, my boss, pulled me aside one day. "Jake, you're scaring me. What's going on?" I couldn't even talk about it without choking up. I was drinking more, whiskey straight from the bottle, alone in my truck. I stopped eating, dropped 10 pounds. My confidence was gone. I kept thinking, why wasn't I enough? Emma's words echoed. "You're always at the garage." Mike's, too. "Live a little." Was I boring? Unlovable? The betrayal wasn't just about them cheating, it was how they made me question myself. I'd look in the mirror and hate the guy staring back. I was falling apart, and I didn't know how to stop it. After catching Emma cheating with Mike, my life unraveled like a bad engine, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to hold together. I was 27, a mechanic who could fix any car, but couldn't fix myself. The weeks after that night, the one where I saw Mike's text on Emma's phone, were a blur of anger, shame, and emptiness that swallowed me whole. I moved out of our apartment. I couldn't stay there, surrounded by memories of Emma's laugh, our late-night talks, the life we planned. I crashed at a coworker's place, sleeping on a lumpy couch that smelled like stale beer. I told Emma to pack her stuff and go, but she kept showing up, leaving voicemails. "Jake, please, I love you. We can work through this." I deleted them without listening. Mike was worse. He'd text, "Bro, let's talk. Family's forever, right?" I blocked him. Family's forever? He'd thrown that away when he crossed that line. Work was a nightmare. I'd always been the guy who could rebuild an engine blindfolded, but now I was screwing up simple oil changes. One day, I dropped a wrench on a customer's Corvette, scratching the paint. Tony, my boss, yelled, "Jake, get it together or you're out." I mumbled an apology, but inside, I was screaming. I started calling in sick, hiding in my truck with a bottle of Jack Daniels. I'd drive to the edge of town, park by the old quarry, and drink until the pain dulled. My savings, the money I'd scraped together for Emma's ring, dwindled as I spent it on booze and takeout I barely touched. I stopped talking to people. My buddy Dave from the garage would call, but I'd let it go to voicemail. My neighbor, Mrs. Carter, left casseroles at my door, worried about how thin I'd gotten. I'd lost 15 pounds, my face gaunt, my eyes hollow. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without seeing a failure. Why wasn't I enough? The question haunted me. Emma's voice played on repeat. "It was a mistake, Jake." Mike's, too. "You're overreacting." They'd made me feel like I was the problem, like I'd driven them to it by being too boring, too predictable, too me dash. One night, I hit the lowest point. I was drunk, sitting in my truck at 2 a.m., staring at a photo of me, Emma, and Mike from last summer. A barbecue at my place. All of us smiling. I'd been so happy then, so blind. I smashed the frame against the dashboard, glass shattering everywhere. My hand was bleeding, but I didn't care. I screamed into the empty cab. "Why did you do this to me?" I wasn't just yelling at them. I was yelling at myself for trusting them, for loving them. I felt worthless, like I'd never be whole again. The next morning, I woke up in my truck, head pounding, hand crusted with blood. I'd passed out there, the bottle empty beside me. A cop knocked on my window, asking if I was okay. I lied, said I'd just pulled over to rest. He let me go, but his pitying look burned. I drove to a gas station, bought a coffee, and sat in the parking lot, staring at nothing. I realized I hadn't cried. Not once, since it all went down. I'd been numb, running on fumes, but sitting there, the weight of it all crashed over me. I was alone. No girlfriend, no brother, no family. Just me, a broken down guy in a broken down life. I thought about giving up, not in the permanent sense, but close. I could quit my job, leave town, disappear, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the memory of my dad, who'd always said, "Fix what's broken, Jake, even if it's you." I didn't know how, but I knew I couldn't stay like this. Rock bottom wasn't just pain. It was clarity. I was done letting their betrayal define me. I just didn't know where to start. Rock bottom wasn't just a place. It was a mirror, forcing me to face myself. After months of drowning in whiskey and self-hatred, I woke up in my truck that morning, hands still stinging from the glass I'd smashed, and something clicked. I was 27, a mechanic who'd spent his life fixing things, but I'd let Emma's and Mike's betrayal break me. Sitting in that gas station parking lot, coffee cold in my hand, I realized I couldn't keep running from the pain. I had to face it, or I'd lose myself. Forever. The shift didn't happen all at once. It started small, with a question. Why am I letting them control how I feel? Emma and Mike had betrayed me, sure, but I was the one keeping their voices in my head. telling me I wasn't enough. I thought about my dad, who'd rebuilt engines with me in our garage, teaching me to take things apart and put them back stronger. You can't fix what you don't understand, he'd say. I didn't understand myself anymore, but I wanted to. That was the first spark of hope I'd felt in months. I drove back to my coworker's place, where I'd been crashing, and looked at the mess of my life. My duffel bag of clothes, my toolbox, a few crumpled photos. That's all I had left. I'd been avoiding everything. Work, friends, even my own thoughts. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out a notebook, one I used to jot down car parts lists, and started writing, not about Emma or Mike, but about me. What I felt, what I wanted. It was messy, just streams of anger and hurt, but it felt like unclogging a drain. I wrote, "I'm not the problem, they are." Seeing those words made it real. The next day, I called a therapist. I'd always thought therapy was for other people, but I was desperate. The first session was awkward. Dr. Ellis, a guy with glasses and a calm voice, asked why I was there. I spilled it all. Emma's cheating, Mike's betrayal, how I felt like a failure. He didn't judge. He just said, "You're carrying their choices like they're yours. They're not." It hit me hard. I'd been blaming myself for their actions, letting their betrayal define my worth. I started going for walks to clear my head. There was a trail near town, a steep hike through pines that led to a lookout over the valley. I'd trudge up there, legs burning, and sit on a rock, staring at the horizon. One day, I realized I wasn't thinking about Emma or Mike. I was noticing the way the light hit the trees, the quiet of the wind. It was the first time I felt like myself, not the guy they'd broken. I started hiking that trail every weekend, each step feeling like I was reclaiming a piece of me. At work, I forced myself to show up. Tony was skeptical but gave me a chance. I focused on the cars, losing myself in the rhythm of bolts and wrenches. One day, I fixed a tricky engine leak that even Tony couldn't crack. He clapped my shoulder and said, "There's the old Jake." It wasn't much, but it was proof I still had something to offer. I stopped drinking, too. Not cold turkey. That was hard. But I'd pour out half the bottle before I could finish it, replacing it with water or coffee. The biggest shift came when I stopped checking Emma's or Mike's social media. I'd been torturing myself, seeing their posts, wondering if they were together. One night, I deleted their numbers and blocked them everywhere. It felt like cutting a chain. I didn't need to know what they were doing. I needed to know who I was without them. For the first time, I saw a future that wasn't about fixing what they broke. It was about building something new. I wasn't healed, not by a long shot, but I was moving, and that was enough. For the first time in months, I started to feel like I could breathe again. After realizing I had to stop letting Emma's and Mike's betrayal define me, I began rebuilding, not just my life, but who I was. I was 27, a mechanic with grease-stained hands and a heart that was still bruised but beating stronger. The road to healing wasn't a straight line, but every step forward felt like taking back a piece of myself they'd stolen. Therapy became my anchor. Dr. Ellis helped me unpack the baggage, how I'd tied my worth to Emma's love and Mike's approval. "You're not defined by their choices," he'd say. I started believing it. I kept journaling, too, filling notebooks with thoughts I used to drown in whiskey. One entry read, "I'm not boring. I'm steady, and that's enough." Writing it felt like a promise to myself. I wasn't the lesser brother or the clumsy mechanic they'd made me feel like. I was enough. I threw myself into hiking. That trail by the quarry became my sanctuary. I'd trek up there every Saturday, my boots crunching on pine needles, my lungs burning from the climb. At the lookout, I'd sit and sketch the view, not like Emma's art, but rough outlines of trees and sky. It was mine, something I did for me. One day, I met a hiker named Sam, a quiet guy who worked as a park ranger. We got talking, and he invited me to join a local hiking group. I hesitated. Socializing felt like a minefield, but I said yes. Those group hikes became a lifeline, connecting me to people who didn't know my past, who saw me as me, not the guy who'd been betrayed. At the garage, I started showing up early again. I took on tougher jobs, like rebuilding a vintage Mustang's engine, pouring my focus into every bolt. Tony noticed. One day he pulled me aside and said, "Kid, you're back. Don't know where you went, but I'm glad you're here." He gave me a raise, not much, but enough to start saving again. Not for a ring this time. But for me, I bought a new pair of hiking boots, a decent jacket, even a cheap camera to snap photos on the trail. It felt good to spend money on myself, not someone else's future. I also started setting boundaries. My coworker Dave kept pushing me to talk it out with Mike, saying, "He's your brother, man." I shut it down. He stopped being my brother when he slept with Emma. I said. It was the first time I'd said it out loud, and it felt like shedding a weight. I didn't know Mike forgiveness, and I didn't know Emma my heart. I stopped checking their social media entirely. I heard through a friend that they were still together, but it didn't gut me like it used to. Their lives weren't mine anymore. The biggest win came when I looked in the mirror and didn't hate what I saw. I'd gained back some weight. My face less gaunt, my eyes clearer. I started working out. Not to be some gym bro, but to feel strong. Push-ups in my tiny rented room. Jogs around the block. I was taking care of myself. Not for anyone else's approval, but because I deserved it. One night, I wrote in my journal, "I'm not just surviving, I'm living." It felt true. Then, at a hiking group meetup, I met Lily. She was 26, a teacher with a quick laugh and a knack for spotting birds on the trail. We clicked over a shared love of bad puns and coffee. I wasn't looking for love, but talking to her felt easy, like I could be myself without trying. She didn't know the old me, the broken one. She saw the guy I was becoming. That was power, knowing I could start fresh, not as a victim, but as a man who'd fought his way back. A year after finding that text from Mike on Emma's phone, I'm not the same guy who drove aimlessly into the night, broken by betrayal. I'm 27, still a mechanic with grease under my nails, but I've rebuilt more than engines. I've rebuilt myself. The scars from Emma and Mike are still there, faint but present, but they don't define me anymore. I've found peace, and it's better than any revenge. After months of therapy, hiking, and rediscovering who I am, I made the final choice to let go. I'd already cut contact with Emma and Mike, but letting go wasn't just about blocking their numbers. It was about releasing the anger that tethered me to them. One day, I sat on my favorite trail lookout, the valley stretching out below, and burned the last photo I had of us together. It wasn't dramatic, just a quiet act. As the ashes drifted away, I felt free. Their betrayal wasn't my burden anymore. I heard through the grapevine that Emma and Mike's relationship crashed and burned. Apparently, they fought constantly, trust issues tearing them apart. Part of me, the old me, might have gloated, but I didn't care. Their mess was theirs. I was done letting their choices rent space in my head. I'd moved into a small studio apartment, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I hung up photos from my hikes, a few sketches I'd done, even a framed picture of me and my dad from years ago. It felt like home, not a shrine to what I'd lost. Work was steady again. Tony promoted me to lead mechanic after I rebuilt that Mustang engine, and I started mentoring a new kid at the garage, teaching him the tricks my dad taught me. It felt good to pass something on, to be more than just the guy who fixes cars. I kept hiking with the group, and my friendship with Lily grew. We weren't rushing into anything, but we'd grab coffee or catch a movie after hikes. She'd tease me about my terrible taste in sci-fi flicks, and I'd fire back about her obsession with birdwatching. It was easy, honest, and nothing like the eggshells I'd walked on with Emma. Lily saw me for me, not some version she wanted me to be. One night, over burgers at a diner, Lily asked about my past. I told her everything, not to unload, but because I could. I wasn't ashamed anymore. She listened, then squeezed my hand and said, "You're stronger than you know." That stuck with me. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. I'd taken the pieces of myself shattered by betrayal and built something better. I started saving again, not for a ring, but for a trip I'd always wanted to take, maybe out west to see the Rockies. I was dreaming for myself now, not someone else. The biggest takeaway hit me during a therapy session. Dr. Ellis asked, "What did you learn from all this?" I thought about it and said, "Sometimes, losing the people you love most shows you who you are." Emma and Mike's betrayal gutted me, but it also forced me to face myself. I learned I'm not defined by who loves me or who betrays me. I'm defined by my choices, showing up at the garage, hiking that trail, writing in my journal, choosing to heal. I learned to trust myself, not just others, and I learned that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up for you, like Lily, like my hiking group, like Tony. I don't hate Emma or Mike anymore. Hate takes energy, and I'd rather spend it living. I'm not saying I'd invite them to my wedding someday, if that ever happens, but I don't wish them ill. I wish them the consequences of their choices. And I wish myself the life I'm building. Standing at that lookout now, I don't see the valley as a reminder of pain. I see it as proof I can climb, and that's enough.